Hello everybody, this is Purge. How's it going, guys? I'm going to be giving you a Dota 2 hotkey video. I haven't done one of these in like 4 years, and I thought it was about time. I finally am redoing my hotkeys, and I'm kind of doing this because there's just so many buttons that we need. Go over some of these here. There's a lot of keys that you need to play Dota 2. Every hero has a minimum 4 skills. You've got 6 items. You have 2 secondary skills for more heroes. Minimum 4 hero control groups is pretty important. I've been playing this whole time with 3, but really I've kind of needed like 4, maybe 5, depending if I play Meepo or Chen. You've got shop, scoreboard, fortify, scan, stop, attack, move, hold position, level up button, purchase your sticky, which is usually TPs, purchase quick buy, which is like the items you're preparing to build, selecting the courier, taking stash items I've never used before, but I'm going to use now, and a console. That's 30 hotkeys. You need a lot of hotkeys to make this work. So what I decided to do is I wanted to show you guys, oops, not that one, this one. I wanted to show you guys a keyboard layout. Now this is in Paint, so let's just talk about some of the ways that I theory crafted this and how you should apply this to doing your own hotkeys. Keep in mind that in the past I used Legacy. The way that Legacy worked in Dota 1 was that you couldn't have the same hotkey for many different heroes. Some heroes did have some overlap, but most heroes had their own individual hotkeys. I think they couldn't program it in the Warcraft 3 engine for everything to have the same hotkey. It wasn't possible unless you use like a third-party hotkey program. Not cheating or anything, just like a third-party hotkey program. So for example, you know, Rubik's Steel was Q. If you're using Shadow Fiend, his raise buttons are here, and this is a skill, and this is a skill. And these are all skills. Like, these are all active skills that any hero would use. So there's a whole bunch of hotkeys that were basically utilized, maybe even G, I can't remember. But basically all these hotkeys were used to do hero skills. Whereas now, hopefully we can undo all the way back. Paint, you did it. Okay, now what I'm doing is WERT. So my hotkeys are always going to be these 4. And then my extra 2, which is for functions, are going to be these. So this is what I'm going to use for all my skills now. It's going to be kind of hard considering that I basically have to relearn every hero's hotkeys. It's not the same, like if you change your 4 keys to 4 other keys, it's not that different in my opinion, but considering that every hero I have has all of these different hotkeys that are now going to be just in a row, it's not the way that I'm used to thinking about it, so I'm going to play like shit for a couple weeks. I've already been having some trouble with new heroes, but eventually I get used to it. So these are my new hotkeys. As you can see, I'm already using way less keyboard space because I need 30 hotkeys. It's really hard to get all of them. This is my control hero. These are 2 of my control groups, so those are all used. I use 4 and 5 for items right now, and pretty much always have. F1 is my select all heroes. I rarely use it, but I should use it more. Why don't I put this on the screen so you can see it a little bit better. F2 is my purchase sticky. F3 is my courier. F4 is my purchase TPs. F5 is my glyph. So I'm already getting through a lot of stuff. Make sure that you put it's really important basically that you put the more important hotkeys on your better hand position. So for me, for example, if I turn this one off for a second, show you my other one. These black dots that you can see is where I put my hands currently. So those 4, I put my pinky on A, and then I put my 3 middle fingers on WER, and then my thumb rests on my spacebar most of the time. So my sweet spot is basically in this area here. These are like the best places for hotkeys for me, is in this area, just because this is the place that I keep my hands. So anything in that surrounding area is really good. I actually don't like using F keys. I never really got used to them, but I do use them now for things like purchasing items. I like the fact that because they're far away, that they're segmented by 4, so I can easily figure out just by touch which ones are which. That's why I like having Glyph here. I think it's a really big mistake for players who click in the bottom right to try to press Glyph. I don't think you should play that way. But make sure that you put all your good hotkeys in the same area. And something other to consider is, where are you going to put your similar hotkeys? So for example, something that I started thinking of when I was trying to think about the fact that I wanted more item hotkeys. Like for example, right now, one of my item hotkeys is Alt-E. It sucks. I don't like it. I used to have like Alt-Q and Alt-S or something like that as well, but now I have 2 mouse hotkeys, but I don't really like my mouse hotkeys. So now I want to put my hotkeys on more things. So what I thought first is, I'll just use 6. 6 is a hotkey that I already used to level up. But now my problem is that I use the same finger, my pointer finger, to choose any of these 3 hotkeys. Which is a problem, because what if I need to press multiple of them at the same time, right? If they're only on 2, 4, and 5, that's fine. But if I'm using my pointer finger to nail 4, 5, 6, and I'm using my pointer finger to get like these hotkeys and these hotkeys as well, then now I'm in a huge problem, because if I need to press any of these buttons at the same time, it's a big deal. And that's one of my skills. My ultimate, oops, I'm sorry, I'm not drawing on my actual screen. I'm sorry. I've been like drawing on this with my mouse because I've been drawing on it, but it's not quite right. I'll just do it this way. Okay, so I've been using these 3 hotkeys, these item hotkeys, with 1 finger. This is my 3rd skill in my ultimate, and anything else over here as well, all on 1 finger. That's like way too much work for 1 finger. And because if I need to press all these at the same time, what if I have to press a mech, a wand, and my ultimate at the same time? I actually can't do that if it's on 4, 6, and T. It's impossible. So you have to take that into account when you consider where your hotkeys are going to be. So something that I'm trying to do instead, and if you can look this up online, but like which fingers are you supposed to use on a keyboard to press certain keys? Everybody's going to be different, so you guys should be customizing this based on what you guys do versus what I do. But if I only use my pointer finger to do these keys, then, oops, I wanted that to be black. On these keys here, so what I want to be different is I maybe want to put some hotkeys down here instead, like on the C, X, V area. That way my pinky, which actually doesn't get very much work, I use my pinky for A, and I use it for shift and caps lock, which I use for different things. But that's it. So my pinky really doesn't get very much work. I use my ring finger for S, which is stop. So that means that the Q is pretty good for a hotkey because I almost never use that. And I've also got Z and X, which are pretty good for hotkeys. So rather than having all of my hotkeys be up here, it's better to spread them out a little bit. That way you can press 2 hotkeys at the same time. So keep that in mind when you guys are planning out your hotkey builds. And to be honest, I recommend you guys do exactly what I'm doing right now. Pull up a paint document, or pull up a paint image of a keyboard, and just fill in the keys. That way you can see what you've used already, where you have too much grouping, where you don't have enough grouping. When I did this first, my keyboard was looking like this. I had pretty much everything filled out, but I had almost nothing on the bottom rows used. So I was like, okay, clearly I need to use the bottom rows more. All these keys are being underutilized, so I started using those a bit more. Tab I use for tabbing between units when I'm controlling a group. This is my shop key. Caps lock is my scoreboard. These are really important to have nearby because I used to play where I would have to open the scoreboard to check to see what hero somebody is, but that would take me like 3 seconds. Now I just hold caps and I can keep right clicking, and then I can see who's who. That's pretty easy. This is my pause, this is my taunt, this is my console. Make sure you have a console key. But these are all ones that are not really, you don't really need them super fast. So there's some other hotkeys that I use as well. I did update a couple down here, and I can show those for you, but I can't remember them off the top of my head, so I'll show you what my current layout is. And this is what I showed you guys before. So this is everything that I'm currently using in terms of layout. So it's basically everything. And I'm gonna open that up as well on a bigger so I can see it a little closer. You guys can kind of see it, I think, but I want it to be a little bit larger for me while I reference this. So I basically use just about everything. I have myself using the 6 and the 7 right now. I'm not sure if that's true because I started playing with it last night. I was using 7 for level up and I thought it was a little bit weird, but I'm using most of the keys in the general area. The G key is clearly not utilized, and maybe it should be. Maybe that should be like my push to talk or something. But I started breaking things down a bit better. But I really recommend doing this kind of map on your keyboard to see like which keys you're actually using. It's important to do so because it'll help you figure out what's better, what's worse. And you'll figure this out as you play more and more and get a better feel for that kind of a thing. So let's actually hop into the game here. And I'll show you guys what I currently have for hotkey setup. Again, this can be, you guys can do this however you want. I recommend eventually going over to, it's probably best for all heroes to use the same hotkeys. The only difference that I'm maybe considering is the fact that my neutrals will now have the same hotkeys as my heroes will. And I'm not a huge fan of that because when you're playing Chen and Enchantress, sometimes you're selecting the wrong heroes and then they cast the wrong spells. So for example, if I'm playing Chen and my Test of Faith skill, the one that nukes, is an E, and I'm playing Chen, and I accidentally tab to my Dark Troll Warlord, and I want to ensnare somebody, and I accidentally tab to him, and I press E, which is his second skill, which would be Raise Skeletons. So rather than testing and faithing, he would use Raise Skeletons instead, for example, and I could lose my window. Whereas with Legacy, which is one good thing about Legacy, is that the hotkeys are almost always different. So for Test of Faith, it used to be T for me, so I'd cast T on the creep, and then I could tab to the troll and press E for ensnare. And I just knew what those were. It's very easy to tab through, but when your hotkeys are the same for your neutrals and your heroes, sometimes you're tabbed on the wrong thing and you'll use the wrong skill at the wrong time, which is a little bit problematic. So for that, what I might do is do unit-specific hotkeys, and then I could go over here and go to neutrals, for example, and then I can change my hotkeys for my neutrals. I might want to do this instead. Right before this, I was using unit specific for all heroes, but it was like this half bastardized version between Legacy and regular, so I was like, this is just not smart, because every time my hotkeys get changed, everything gets messed up. because it's not like all the same set. It's like a very customized set, which is just a poor choice if you're playing on any other computers other than your own. It's just a bad idea to have unit specific hotkeys, I think. But I think that it's pretty smart to adjust things like courier neutrals. I'll probably do this where I'll have unit specific hotkeys. I'll leave the default all the same, but for couriers, I might go back to the hotkeys that I had before because I'm still kind of getting used to this. Like before, courier was home, return. I'm kind of used to this now. DF. I'm used to DFT, but I think I'm going to keep base on E because in the past I keep messing this up and I never use this hotkey personally. So this is probably fine. I don't like the return. I don't remember what it used to be now because I've been using the courier a lot. DFT is fine. This used to be R. This used to be transfer for T. I don't know what this used to be. I'll probably keep it like this. I always forget the E one though. So I'll probably do this. And I'll change the neutral ones later. But other than that, default is going to be all of this. Other things, selecting your hero, this comes down to preference. I think if I could go back and do it from the beginning, I would use F1 to select my hero. Just because then I could use the one hotkey for more control groups, but it's essentially the same thing. I do it just a reverse where selecting all controlled units is going to be F1 for me. I don't really like reaching to the F keys because it moves my fingers away from my keyboard where I might actually feel comfortable. I should probably keep a keyboard layout up here, I think. Let's do... Oops, that one has crashed apparently. Okay, there it goes. What I'm going to do actually is just reopen the file. That way you don't have to see the one with red all over it. 1 second, sorry for the delay. Don't save. Okay, this is what I want. And then I'm going to expand a little bit. Come on, paint. Alright, so I'm just going to keep this here down on the bottom of the screen. That way you guys can kind of see a reference point at all times. I did this in my last hotkey video and I'm sure it was useful. But I'll just keep that here. Obviously it's cutting off the right side, but I don't really give a shit, right? Because we're not going to use those hotkeys. So, I don't really like jumping to the F keys personally because it moves me away from where my hand is sitting and I might misclick. The more times you move away from where your hand is sitting, the more times you might misclick when you return to this, so I like to avoid that. Selecting all controlled units, so this would be if I summon illusions and necros and I want to all attack the same unit, I should just press F1 and right click. That way I don't have to mouse drag things, nothing gets left behind, it should be straightforward. Attack, move, and force attack, you need a hotkey for this. I'm just going to leave it on A because I've always used it on A. Hold position is pretty rare. I usually only do it with auto attack off. It's not that big of a deal to not have this, but if you have auto attack on, you need hold position because then you will make sure that you won't move. So if you get ruptured or something like that, I personally just press S because when you don't have auto attack on, it does the same thing. But you can use a hotkey for this. Technically, I could turn this off, but I don't use H anyways. It's pretty far away. My courier key is on F3, not super important. You could get a hotkey just to instantly deliver the items if you want. I know there's a button in the bottom right of the screen where you can do that already. Quick buy is an important hotkey to have. That way you don't have to move your mouse over here and spam right click. Very often people make that mistake. Definitely get a hotkey for quick buy. It's really important. The way that you guys control your camera can be different as well. I didn't really talk about this much, but for example, I know that there are some keyboard layouts where some people will do something like, rather than edge panning, which is kind of inefficient, what they'll do is they'll either camera grip with their mouse, with a mouse button, or what they'll do is they'll use WASD on their keyboard to move their camera. And this is kind of a good method of camera control. I think it's great. If you guys want to do this, I see nothing wrong with it. But basically it makes sure that your camera's only moving with your keyboard. And by doing that, it makes sense because the way that I move personally is if I want to move my camera and click on something, I will take my mouse. Let me get more emphasis here on my screen. I'll take my mouse, I'll move to the right to move my camera over, and then I'll come back and try to click on somebody. Whereas a camera movement or a keyboard movement, somebody will press D on their keyboard right now, and then they'll just move their mouse slightly and click. So for me to precision click, I have to do this to edge pan, then I have to come back and then click, which is inaccurate and gives me a higher chance of not clicking on somebody. So if you guys are used to this method where you move the camera with a keyboard or use a mouse grip, A+, it's the most ideal method. I'm just not going to get into it, I think, right now. Maybe someday, maybe next time I'm ready to move my cheese a little bit, I'll get back into it. But for now, it's not something I want to explore. I'm just way used to edge panning, so I'm going to stick with edge panning for now. But if you guys do this, great. The problem is then you have 4 less keys on your keyboard, so now you're still running into that 30 key problem that I was talking about before. But if you do this, I think it's a really good way to move your camera because your precision clicks should be way better. If you've ever seen any like like mouse maps. Have you ever seen those before, guys? Where you like see, you take trackings of where your mouse goes in a whole game, and you can see like a drawing. It looks like somebody had a stencil and they just stenciled all over the screen over 60 minutes. Well, for edge pan, it gets kind of crazy because your mouse is constantly moving like this. But for the people that use keyboard movements, their mouse clicks are almost always in the middle of the screen. Their mouse is almost always in the middle, and sometimes it goes to the map wherever your map may be, left, right, bottom left, or bottom right, depending. So yeah, that's really good to do. Bottom right map, by the way, does make a lot of sense, just because of the fact that the way that Dota is structured is that it's a bottom left to top right game in some ways. Like your safety zone is usually to the bottom. Oops, this is backwards. Your safety zone is either to the bottom left or the top right. So technically, if you're panicking, you don't want to accidentally click on your minimap. That never happens when you're on Dire, but when you're on Radiant, it does happen sometimes. Whereas if it's in the bottom right, there's a lower chance of that happening. So it technically makes more sense for the map to be in the bottom right. But whatever. Some things are not going to be fixable, guys. So that is that map movement. But yeah, camera grip, I have this enabled, but I just never do it because I'd have to click down on my mouse wheel. Maybe what I should do actually is I could try putting it on my mouse instead. The mouse wheel is weird for me because I use my pointer finger to do that. And this is, I mean, this is a lot about hotkeys, guys. Don't think that I'm just filling time here. I never do that, first of all. But you have to adjust how you use a mouse and keyboard to how you're doing hotkeys. It's really important. So, for example, something I'm thinking about right now, I was considering changing this hotkey here for my items. These are my two mouse buttons. I use my thumb for both of these. But one thing I found was actually that while I was testing this is that I get really inaccurate when I use this button. This is the one that's closer to my, on my mouse, it's the one that's closer to me, the button for my thumb. So for example, if I'm pressing this hotkey, this is my forward mouse button. So I'm just pressing the hotkey and then I'm clicking. I can easily press the hotkey and not move my mouse basically. When I press the other one, it's moving my, oops. It feels way more clunky to me, like I don't feel comfortable doing it. It's like moving, because I'm basically moving where my thumb is, and I'm pulling it back, lifting it, and then clicking, and then mouse clicking, and it's moving my mouse. Whereas the other one, I just slightly nudge my thumb up. It's like I take my thumb and I go, and the other ones I'm like this, button. And it's way more jostling to my mouse. So this hotkey is not very precise at all. I wouldn't want to use this in a crazy team fight. So I think I'm going to do is actually change this hotkey to something different, maybe on my keyboard somewhere in ZXCV. For example, here's another X hotkey that I put in recently. I'll probably change this, and I think what I'd like to do maybe is change my camera grip to maybe this hotkey. That way when I'm moving my camera, it's okay if I move my screen, and then maybe I can get used to camera grip. I'll probably try that out. Stuff that you can practice. And keep in mind that's going to take 5, 10, 15, 20 games to get really used to this stuff. But if you do get used to it, it's probably better for your game, and it might improve you in different ways. The other reason that this is really important for camera is just because moving your camera is how you gather information. I found this out in Korea when I was playing, and Ja was coaching us at the time, and I was going through a really bad streak where I had very low confidence. I was playing poorly. I didn't have confidence in my play. It was just going bad. And what Ja pointed out, he's like, looking at your perspective, he watched just from my perspective, he's like, you made all the right choices that game, and we lost, we got shit on. But he's like, but the problem is that you didn't gather enough information. I couldn't tell whether or not it was the right choice. From your perspective, you made the right choice, but you didn't gather information well enough. And that's because I wasn't moving my camera very fast. So what we did was we upped my camera speed for my edge pan, and by doing that, it took me less time to move my camera somewhere to look at something, so it felt more comfortable for me to look around my hero, because then rather than just having a little square where my hero is, I instead was moving my camera like this, and then I get twice as much area and twice as much information to make choices. So the players that move their camera more and gather all the information are generally going to make better choices. That's why camera stuff is really, really important. Mostly that comes down to the speed at which your camera, your edge pan goes, and that's going to be this slider here. There's also one that I believe has a acceleration amount. I turn this down when I'm casting, but this should always be maxed out in my opinion. But other than that, adjust your camera speed. If you feel like you're not gathering enough information, try adjusting your camera speed. A lot of players will have it really low. Really don't recommend that. You really need it to be higher. It's really very, very, very important. So I'll probably mess with that hotkey in a bit later. Pause is important, but not super important. Control groups you can set here. As you can see, I have group 2, group 3, and then my first one is obviously on select hero, which is fine. Can I also put this to 1? No, I can't. So it won't let me do both. Chat wheel is pretty important actually. I did set my chat wheel here. I put mostly positive things in, and I think I need to use chat wheel more. Personally, I never do Roche timer, and I need to do that. And things like this can be just nice just to give positive feedback to people. I like giving positive feedback in games, even when my allies are being really angry and shit. I just won an Underlord game last night where my allies were really angry. And I just kept being positive, even though the guy was being a dumbass and like completely lowering our chances of winning. That's important. Okay, next thing, learnability. So this is my level up hotkey. I put it on C. I'm not sure if I like it yet. I don't know if I'm even using 6. Again, like I said, I've been kind of adjusting things, but what did I put that there? Oh, I put another control group. I put a control group on 6. I'm not sure if I like that. I think that's a waste. I might just put this back, I think, is what I'm going to do. Because I've been trying to get used to this, and it's very, very disorienting considering I've played 4 years of Dota 2 with my learnability hotkey being 6. Even though 6 is kind of a perfect place on the keyboard in a lot of ways, it's also a reach. I'm kind of reaching my pointer finger from the R to the 6. And by doing that, I am stretching my hand very slightly. You guys might have more or less trouble with this, by the way, if you have smaller or larger hands. Larger hands are generally better, very similar to playing piano because you have more reach and you have more access to more keys. But generally, you don't want to move your hand too much from the core position. You just want to do like slight stretches to get to what you need. But learning ability, I go 6 in U. I can press that pretty easily. It's a stretch to go to U, but it's usually in downtime. There's another way to upgrade this. I believe you can hold control and click the hotkey that you want to level up. If you want to level it up that way, that's arguably better. I think that's just genuinely better than this 6 thing. Although if I want to upgrade my ultimate, what I'll do is press 6 and then I'll press the hotkey for my ultimate. It works about the same. If I need to level it up and use it, I press 6, T, and then T again to use the spell. So it's fine. I think this is reasonably okay. From a meta perspective, it's alright to use it as a hotkey. Some of these are kind of cool. Move is important actually. Did I change this hotkey? I did actually. I just messed it up. I had it set on something. This used to be M for me. In Dota 1 it was M. This is actually important for a few heroes. For Juggernaut it's really important because if you're spinning on Juggernaut, you don't want to attack your opponent because when you're spinning you actually can't attack. You'll attack but all you'll do is apply a orb debuff. So for example, if you have a Blightstone, you will apply the Blightstone to them, even though it doesn't attack them. The only way you can actually do damage while spinning is through Mjolnir, I believe, or Maelstrom, because it will give you a chance to nuke. So a 25% chance to shoot a lightning, then you can attack. That's the only way you can attack through Jug Spin, is with Maelstrom and Mjolnir. Kind of an interesting thing. And it's not even technically an attack. It is, but it isn't. So what you want to do when you Jug Spin is actually move command after them. That way it's impossible for them to juke you because your character, it has a computer that's choosing to always follow somebody. You can't juke a move command. So that's why Jug Spin is always better to use move. I never do because it's all the way on M, but a lot of players, Bambo included, he always had this. He had this set on a hotkey. That way if you play Jug, he would always get the spin kill if somebody was not faster than him, which shouldn't happen if you're playing Jug. So I'm going to probably adjust this later. I thought that I had it set to something, but I must have changed it. I'll have to go back through and make another keyboard map where I color in everything. In fact, I can probably do that. No, I'm gonna do that later because it would take too much time. I don't think it's worth it here. So yeah, definitely recommend move. Directional move is kind of interesting. I didn't see this before, but it moves in a direction without pathfinding, which sounds to me like it might be good to use sometimes when you're trying to juke, or when you, I'm not sure, I'll have to test this one out, but it looks like it might be really interesting. It might be a good idea to set this to a hotkey. There's a chance that this could give you a juking advantage over your opponents, but I'm not exactly sure how this works, but I'll look into it later. Maybe should have done that before. Yeah, I'm going to pause the video. I'll be right back. Alright, I couldn't get it to work. I don't know what's wrong, but I tried setting it into a hotkey. It didn't work. Not sure what's going on. Patrol can be pretty nice because you can use it to, for example, in the Secret did this at Shanghai, I believe, where they took an illusion and they put it on a high ground and they patrolled it back and forth. He might have just done it by doing shift right click, which is queuing commands, and you could do that like 30 times, so it basically patrol. But you can patrol something, and then what they did is, as the illusion was pacing, they saw that it got interrupted, which meant that there was a smoked hero there, or an invis hero. So they realized that the smoke was coming because of that, and that was really cool. But there's some other cases where patrol can be nice. You can stack ancients with this, with neutrals. There's some like paths that people have done where you just patrol a neutral and it automatically stacks for you perfectly. Things like that are kind of cool. But as a whole, patrol is really not that needed. You can get away with this. You absolutely need to cancel current action hotkey. This is arguably the, I don't know, definitely top 10 most important hotkeys in the game. Just because you can cancel your animation after you cast a spell, or as you're about to cast a spell, that is. You say, oh shit, I actually don't want to ulti anymore. Press S, cancel it. Lots of really good things. You can cancel your auto attacks, things like that. Activate Glyph, like I said, I recommend putting in a hotkey for this, but it doesn't have to be a super important one. Activate scan. This is a new hotkey that I've never used before. I've actually cast scan less than twice in my whole life, and I need to, and it's mostly because I'd have to move my mouse to the bottom left where the minimap is, click on it, and then scan. And this way I can just press a hotkey, click on map, and scan. So I need to do that more often. That's definitely something I need to do to increase my solo play, actually. Taunt item is always important, but I put it at a weird spot. That doesn't matter. Toggle auto attack, maybe you guys might want this. Action item is like snowballs, things like that, stuff that's like out of game essentially. Courier speed burst, I don't need an auto hotkey for that. Purchase sticky. So this is good. This is for buying TPs. I put this in a place that I can always find. It's my F4 key, so it's my, if I reach my hand up, I know it's the key that's most to the right, so that's pretty easy to grab. Stash items, I may move this hotkey to somewhere else. Maybe I'd want this for an item hotkey. I guess right now I have X over here. I could put Z down here maybe, and then turn this mouse into camera grip perhaps. Might be a good idea, because I think this is my mid mouse button. So I also have, actually I have mouse buttons on the right side of my mouse as well that I never use, so maybe I should do that. But the place that I grip is kind of, it's not really, oh, I can maybe get used to it. Okay, it doesn't register for some reason. I'm pretty sure this one does. Yeah, that's my middle mouse button. Yeah, lots of thought can go into this, guys. Scan is important, taunt item not important. Purchase sticky, very important. Take stash items. I've never had a hotkey for this before, but I'm going to try it out. That way if I'm buying something from, for example, when if I'm buying an item and I'm grabbing it from my enemy fountain, usually what I do is I walk up to range and it applies if it combines, but sometimes I have to click on it to bring it into my stash, and then I have to click the grab stash. If I have a hotkey instead, I can blink forward, grab it, and then escape out instantly, so that'll lower my time. Sometimes when you're in base as well, you'll want to grab stash items. Like for example, if I buy something, oh, this is actually a really good point. If, for example, sometimes when I buy like observers or sentries, while I already have some in my inventory and I'm in the middle of a TP, sometimes they don't combine and I'd have to move my mouse and click to combine. This way, I can instantly just press Z and they'll go into my inventory. It's really important to have this hotkey for Tinker as well, because you'll be doing things like put Bloodstone in your stash. That way you regen faster because it gives you faster regen, because your bottle gives a bigger percentage of your mana pool. And then right before you finish your TP, you take stash items to get your items back. So this hotkey is very important if you play Tinker. Sometimes, I mean, honestly, I could use this right away just thinking about it now. Just grabbing TPs, grabbing things like that. Sometimes I don't transfer it into my items fast enough, and that's kind of a problem. You absolutely need a shop hotkey. I recommend putting this in a good spot. For me, I put it on tilde, which is my upper leftmost point on my keyboard. I really, really like this hotkey. It needs to be in a good place. I think I used to have it on caps lock, but then I would press it so often that it would mess up my actual caps lock. I know there's a way to turn that off. People have sent me files before about how to do that, but then I reformatted my PC and I didn't bring it over, so no big deal. Showcase view. This is a hotkey that's important to remember, because this is it's an eye right now. This is the one that zooms in on your camera. I think there's a way you can disable this in console, because it's actually very detrimental to your game when you go into it. There's also a hotkey on the portrait of every hero if you want to look at that. But yeah, camera actions. This is where you set your camera place if you want to do that. If you want camera zoom in and out. These are kind of irrelevant, but most people don't use that. Screenshots, pretty irrelevant. I never use that actually. I'm actually just going to delete that. I don't give a shit about that. Console, need a console button. This one's kind of interesting, on alt modifier. I thought about doing this when I was playing a game, but then I forgot about it and got really confused. So what this is, for example, when you hold alt, it'll change hero icons and stuff like that. For me, pressing alt is a pain in the ass, because I basically bring my thumb from my spacebar all the way over to the left alt, and it's kind of weird for my hands. And I've played a lot of MMOs in the past where I would use alt to cast hotkeys, and my thumb would just get tired all the time, so I know it's not good for my hand to pull it in from left to press alt like this all the time. And so what you can do instead, for example, is you can change it so it's not alt anymore, which is really cool. That way I could change it to like B or something, so I could do like BW, B and then W to do a different hotkey, instead of having to like hugely move my hand. And something like B might be a good idea, it's just I have to get used to it. Like for example, I have it on scan right now, but I could do something like that. That way my thumb doesn't have to move nearly as much. And then you get a whole huge amount of hotkeys. Like I haven't done this and I didn't talk about this yet, but it's another thing you can do, and I've done in the past. So you can do things like Alt X. So when you hold Alt and then X, it will do a hotkey. Or you can do things like, you can put two things on items. Like I know Wago does this, for example. He has quick cast on some, and on the same hotkey he has a non-quick cast version. So for example, his would have X and Alt X. If he does Alt X, it does quick cast of that item, If he does X, it just does regular cast again. There's lots of stuff like that that you can do. So you can basically open up your keyboard a lot. While I said there's a lack of space heavily on my keyboard, having alt functions for some of that stuff can be kind of nice. For example, I use voice chat for Q. I don't know if I like that. I think I'm going to change that. That hotkey is way too good to use just for voice chat maybe. Although by pressing it, I don't have to move my hands at all. I'm moving my pinky from A to Q, and then I can very easily voice chat while fighting, which in the past I would have to do Alt-E, which moves my thumb over, which is not good. So there's a lot of stuff to think about when you're doing your hotkeys, but definitely Alt stuff is a really good exploration to do if you want, and the Alt modifier is there if you guys do want to change that. I think I want to, I just have to get used to it. The only thing I currently use Alt for is going to be for neutral spawn boxes, tower attack range, and sometimes when I want to see what heroes there are on the map, it can be kind of nice. Something about this, by the way, you can invert this if you want, so you see hero icons instead. I personally don't like that. I would prefer these, and I also don't like, there's one where, yeah, this one. It'll just show the text of the hero. I don't like this either. I like this because you see what heroes they are, even if it's brief. Whereas right now when I see the colors, what I have to do is I see the colors and then I have to look at the top of the screen and see what hero that is. That's pretty slow. What I should be doing is I should just hold Alt whenever I see a hero, and then I should be able to see who they are. Rather, in regular games though, I like to see the arrows because I want to know which way they're looking and which way they're moving, because you can get information. For example, if somebody's sitting at a camp and they're facing this way, that means they're farming the camp. You can know that just by looking at it. And you can see like smaller arrows to see illusions, things like that is really useful. So I really like the directional things. These are great. I really like this. I like having Alt to show hero icons if possible. If you don't do that, it'll show hero names instead, but I prefer hero icons personally because I recognize them better. I think this is fine. Again, you can Alt toggle it if you want. That way it goes the opposite way, depending on which you like. Show minimap on the right for any league players. Minimap hero size is kind of up to your preference. You can make them very small to show exactly where they are, or you can make them bigger. I like them a little bit bigger because, I don't know, maybe it helps me, maybe it doesn't, but I feel like I am more likely to see minimap if they're bigger. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I like them a little bigger. That's what she said. Auto attack, I just use standard. Do I have this on? Attack any nearby target unless you have just moved. Deny to creep or pressured. Press the stop or hold key. So this is like a medium between the two. Auto attack never on, I think, is a mistake personally. Some players like it. The problem is that, for example, if you get like mini stunned or something and you stop being stunned, your hero won't auto attack out of it. They'll just instantly stand still, and then you have to A-click the ground or you have to right-click your enemy hero. So sometimes when it's really chaotic, if you get stunned and you don't instantly start auto-attacking, you'll miss one or two auto-attacks. This is most important for a carry, by far. If you're playing carry, I really don't like never auto-attack because you can miss fractions of seconds where you should be attacking, and then that will mean that you get one less hit off before you die, and you might not kill them before they kill you. So at minimum, I really recommend standard. Always is something that some people like. Again, you can set a hotkey to turn this off between never and always. So if you're like last hitting or if you're in a late game team fight, you can turn it on. But that's more presence of mind. Maybe some people are bad at that. So I just use standard now. Attack any nearby target unless you have just moved, deny to creeped, or press the stop or hold key. So I assume that means... I'm not really sure. I just don't notice it. It just works with me. They developed this recently, I think. In Dota 1, obviously, I used always, but this is kind of bad if you're hiding in trees and you don't want to attack somebody, then you would attack them. But with standard, you won't attack them. If I move somewhere, you won't attack. If you deny a creep, you also won't attack. If you press the stop or the hold key, you also won't attack. So that's why this works for me. As soon as I press S, I know that I've essentially issued a hold command. So it works for me. But whatever you guys like, I recommend standard personally, but I don't completely understand the positives and benefits of never and always, but I'm pretty sure I do. Auto-select summon units can be something you can do. This is good for if you spawn wards, for example, with Shadow Shaman, and you want them instantly to start attacking the right person. Instead of, for what I do personally, what I do is I press W, well I used to, now I'm going to have to press T, to summon the wards, then I have to press 2, which selects my wards, then I right-click the hero, and oftentimes what happens is my wards have already attacked, like creeps, so I miss one wave of attacks, which could be enough to kill a hero or not. So this is arguably good. I should probably use this. The problem is when you are using Manta Style or something like this, you don't always want them to be selected personally, I just use hotkeys. For example, if I'm playing like Dry Ranger, I have my hero selected with 1, I press Manta style with my hotkey, then I press 2 to right-click the illusions on the right person. If, for example, I use Manta and they auto-select, then I have a higher chance of just right-clicking right away. So this might be a good thing to checkbox, especially if you play a lot of summoning things like Necro 3s. It's going to be very good as well. For me, for example, I have to, if I'm playing Beastmaster, I blink in, I roar, I blink in, summon Necros, roar, then I press 2, then I right click the opponent, then I tab, press R, left click. That's all the keys that I have to press for me to play Beastmaster that way. If I auto select summon units, I would blink, summon Necro, right click them, press R, left click. That's less keys, I think, by a little bit. And that stuff like lowers the amount of time that it takes for you to do stuff and increases the chance that you will kill somebody. All of this shit matters, guys. It literally all matters. And the cool part is that it goes for like 110 heroes. So like you have to think about how these hotkeys function for all the heroes you play. If you play all heroes like I mostly do, then you have to think about the stuff. If you guys only play like 15 heroes, it's not a big deal. But for a lot of different heroes and a lot of different roles, all of these hotkeys really matter. I probably would recommend to do this. Especially if you're limited on control groups. This is a really good idea, actually, to use this. For me, I'm a little limited on control groups, so if I summon new units, this is pretty recommended. I don't know if... Maybe it's easier to play Arc Warden with this. It probably is, actually, if you're summoning Necros, for example. But for me, I already have that hotkey for F1, which selects all units. This is what I need to use a lot, is F1. If I don't use this checkbox, I need to use F1 more, otherwise I'm not doing my job well. So I should be using F1 a lot. So you can, either of these things should probably be checked. Either the auto-selected summon units or the select all units hotkey. That is in a good spot, so I'm going to use F1 a lot more. Double tap ability self-cast, some people swear against this. I really like it. If I'm in a dangerous position, I can double tap R. Now it's going to be W on Omni Knight to heal myself, to disrupt myself, stuff like that. Smart double tap. Holding down Alt when pressing an ability or item will trigger a double tap if possible. I don't even know if that's needed. I've never used this before. I don't think I need it. I almost never accidentally double tap. That's the problem though. For example, this is what happens. So if I'm trying to cast Disrupt on somebody, but they're not quite there yet, or I misclick, then what I'll do is I'll select... I will click my hotkey to disrupt, and I will click to try to disrupt somebody, but I'll miss, and then I might press it again. So if you basically press your hotkey twice accidentally, then you will disrupt yourself instead of your target, and then you really fucked up. For me personally, that doesn't happen very often because I generally I don't freak out about that for some reason. There's also a timer, I believe. It might be in advanced options. Yeah, here. So this is the amount of seconds. This is a newer thing, but the time in seconds between an ability being clicked or pressed twice in a row to register as casting on yourself. Default is 0.60. So this is 0.6 seconds between an ability being clicked or pressed twice in a row to register. Does that mean it has to be less than that? I believe it does. If you click the button twice, but the separation is more than 0.6 seconds, then it doesn't self-cast. Even if I press W twice in a row, as long as they're separated by 0.6 seconds, it will never double tap it for me. That's the important thing. So if you guys, depending on how often that you guys double tap self-cast, you should adjust this slider. And because of this existing now, I think all people should double tap to self-cast in my opinion. Because the way that most pros do it, or that they did it in Dota 1, they would, for example, they would look at their hero icon down here. That's what you could click on that. So they would click disruption and then they would click on their hero icon. That's how they would disrupt themselves. And sometimes you can also click on disruption and then click on the heroes at the top. So I remember there's this one pro game that we played in Korea against RRQ. This is right before the TI qualifiers, where we played against him. We were shitting on him, and then I was playing Shadow Demon. Everybody was super ahead of my team, and nobody bought BKB, but we were against a Centaur, and he was the only stun. And what kept happening was I kept just fucking up disruptions. I choked ultra hard. It was probably the biggest choke I ever had as a pro player. And I just never disrupted anybody, and we ended up losing the game because they just kept killing everybody, and most of which I kept not disrupting people. There were a couple times where it was actually impossible for me to cast disruption on my ally because the Centaur jumped right on top of them. His hero model actually blocked all capabilities of me casting disruption, so I would have had to cast up here instead, which I never knew that you would have to do, but that's a possibility as well that you guys might have to consider. But that was a very frustrating game. Anybody could have bought a BKB that game actually, but they didn't because we had Shadow Demon, and then I just choked the entire game. So that was shitty. But it exists. Look it up if you want. Anyways, double tap ability to self cast is a really good thing in my opinion. You can use it for force staffs, especially for force staffs. Really important on force staffs because the timing is so important that it has to be at that exact moment. I really recommend double tap and adjust this if you keep casting on yourself, or kind of fix your shit basically. Unified controls, orders with control. This is another way that I should be controlling all of my units that I don't currently, but I just have to keep remembering that these are here because I keep forgetting. And that's what's been happening in these games. I'll jump into a game and I don't remember what I changed all my hotkeys to, so I don't know how to chat. I don't know how to voice chat. There's like a bunch of stuff that I'm not doing. Teleport requires hold stop. This one is definitely something that you guys might want to consider just because people do this fairly often. So when you teleport somewhere, you expect to get there earlier than you do, and you're trying to cast a spell as soon as you arrive. So what most people do is, as soon as they think their teleport's about to stop, they'll issue a cast of a spell. But what you should be doing is, whenever you issue a teleport, you should hold shift right away. And then when you want to do something afterwards, then you do your movement. So for example, I hold shift and I right click. That way, as soon as I teleport in, I instantly start moving. Or as soon as I arrive, I hold shift and I press BKB. That way, as soon as my TP finishes, I've instantly pressed BKB faster than my opponents can react. And then I don't have to worry about delay and things like that. So this hotkey is, this option is very important. Currently, I don't like using it. Mostly, I started using it because sometimes I was canceling my TPs. Because I would try to cast a spell, and it's a huge hurt. You lose like 20 seconds if you have to walk to base. Can actually lose you games in a lot of ways. The problem is that I wasn't completely used to it, so the only way to cancel it now is to press S or H for me. You have to use stop or hold. I should do this probably, but I didn't get used to it. With that said, just because in those panic moments I was very used to being able to like right click the round to cast or cancel or something, or other times, for example, I'd accidentally start a TP during a team fight, for example, and then I would want to break that and cast a spell. So I'm trying to cast a spell, but that doesn't work. I'd have to press either S or H to cancel the TP. So there's like problems like that occur if you're not used to it for this key. Most of the time I don't cancel my TPs lately, so I think I'm going to leave it off, but some of you guys may want to leave this on or off depending. Another time that I sometimes mess up, if I think I'm holding shift but I'm actually holding caps lock, for example, then sometimes I cancel my TP when I plan to shift Q, but I don't. So, it happens fairly often. It's kind of a contentious issue, but it's up to you guys what you want to do. Right click to force attack. This would allow you to deny just with a right click on allied creeps. I generally don't recommend this because if you're running away from opponents when you're about to die, sometimes you'll right click a creep that's below half HP and then you will walk over to deny that creep and you'll start attacking it. Whereas if I right click it currently with this off, then I'll just walk up to it and then I'll realize right away. If you start attacking, then you stop moving in a lot of cases. So I think right click to force attack, it's up to you guys, but I'm personally very, very comfortable with the A command, the attack command. So you could save a hotkey this way though, if you turn off this one. It should, if you take this hotkey off and then you turn this on, right click to force attack, you don't need that hotkey. So you could save a hotkey space if you guys are interested. Pressing an attack key will trigger an attack at the location of the mouse. So this is basically quick attack or quick cast for attacking. So rather than, for me, for example, I press A, then I left click somebody. Instead, you could just, I could just press A instead of left clicking. I could just press A if I had this option on. So there's an interesting variety of these three things that you can do between attack, move, force attack, and right click to force attack and quick attack. Basically any MOBA that you come from, whatever your hotkey setups are, you should be able to do in Dota 2. That's why Valve is amazing. Trigger an attack at the location of the mouse cursor. Yeah, I don't know. That's actually not a bad idea. For example, you could do stuff like if you're waiting for somebody to show up. This is actually kind of cool, actually. I like this a lot. For example, if a puck phase shifts and I'm standing there with a melee hero and I'm trying to attack him before he gets out, what I do right now is I stand right in front of where his phase shift is. Here's his phase shift and I'm standing this way looking at him. And I'm kind of right clicking the ground right in front of me, but the problem is that if I go too far, I'll walk through the animation of the phase shift, and then when he pops out, my hero has to turn around to attack, which takes time. But if I can quick attack instead, and this is issuing attack at the location, if there's no enemies around and it's just a puck phase shift, what I can do is I can spam A, which is instantly going to issue an attack command right where he's standing, but it won't move my hero probably. It might though. if I issue an attack command, it'll probably give me an attack move to that location. So I think it's technically the same as me spamming A left click, but it should be more rapid because I can spam A faster with my keyboard than I can do A left click, A left click, A left click. So this might be useful. I think I'm going to turn this on. I'll try this out maybe. I don't see me not using this. I see there's definitely potential for me using this. Even if most of the time I just spam right click, doing this on my keyboard is going to be more accurate because then I'm not, every time I right click, it's messing up my mouse movement. But instead, if I'm pressing A, for example, I can always move my mouse exactly how I want versus right click, which is going to be juddery like this. So things like these are important. Sometimes you'll misclick. And using the key press on your mouse, or sorry, on your keyboard, and the position on your mouse, which is precise, is arguably more accurate. So things like these you guys might want to use. Simple colors and minimap. I don't like this personally because I like to see which color everybody is. If you're colorblind, then you might have this issue. Colorblind mode will actually, what colorblind mode mostly does is it changes the red and green to two different colors. I think it's like blue and pink because red and green are very, very common colors that colorblind people cannot see. So colorblind mode is good for that reason. Edge pan, I still use this. Again, if you do that keyboard stuff, then you should probably turn off edge pan. Sometimes edge pan is bad most of the time. Reverse camera grip is when you grip, it'll go opposite, like if you're flying an airplane, for example, in video games, it'll flip or not. Center camera on hero respawn, I really recommend that you don't have this unless you're new to Dota. If you're new to Dota, it's good, but for me personally, I always hear when my hero respawns because I have play sound in desktop. So even if I'm alt-tabbed, I will always hear my hero respawning. This one's really important, and I like these default respawn and death music. That way you can always recognize. So for example, if you change your sound pack, you're always going to have the same sound that plays. That way you always know when you're respawned. I really recommend that. But I don't like center hero on camera or center camera on hero on respawn because when I'm dead, I'm watching a team fight, for example, and if I want a team fight as close as possible, like if there's a tier 1, I will click TP here as soon as I respawn. But the problem is that my camera will move to my fountain, and then I'll initiate a TP from fountain to fountain, which is obviously a waste. So I really don't like center camera on hero on respawn. I think this is absolutely not worth it. Disable camera zoom. That doesn't bother me. Some people might. Hold select hero to follow. I think I already do this. I just double tap 1 and I hold it, and then it follows my hero. So I guess I could just press it once and hold it, and then it would work. Camera speed you need to adjust if you're not gathering information fast enough. I think I already covered all of these, right? Invert, alt, toggle. These I 100% recommend you guys put these in. Holding alt shows neutral spawn boxes. Holding alt shows tower attack range. Absolutely 100% put these on. When you guys place wards, you should be able to see spawn boxes right now, but holding alt to do them is extremely important. You can see which way is the best way to stack. You can see if you're going to block a camp accidentally. You can see where you're going to ward to block, etc. Things like that is really important. If you guys lose track of your hero often, I recommend keeping this on. Holding alt highlights your hero. I don't ever lose track. I just double tap 1 if I need to find my hero, and then it centers on him, very similar to this one. So select hero to follow your hero. Yeah, that should just be the same thing, like a camera thing. Steam messages, whispers. I just turn this off because I stream and I don't want that stuff to be shown. Channel messages appear in other channel tabs. I don't like these either. These are mostly just because I stream, but it's up to you guys. Ability range for when casting. A lot of pro players do this, but maybe not a shitload. I think it's a little bit more out of favor than it used to be. It's that thing where if you cast a spell, it'll show the arrow. Basically, the nice thing about this, in my opinion, is it gives you a better... It basically shows you where your hero is at all times when you're about to cast a spell. So sometimes if you get like pudge hooked or something, and your camera moves from where you expect it to be, you'll be more likely to know where you are. This might actually be amazing to turn on. I'm actually going to demo this really quick because this might work differently than it used to. In the past, the way that it worked is it'll show a white arrow from the base of your hero to the point where you're casting. So it just shows like an arrow in the direction. But what I really wanted to show is the range of my spells before I cast them. I already kind of know this because I play the game enough, but in reality, there's probably a lot of cases where you just might not know the range of things, and it's going to be worth seeing it. So for example, if I want to cast, this is how I want it to work. If it works like this, I'm going to leave it on. But yeah, this is the same way. It's not a white arrow, it's a red one, but does it? Oh, okay, I see it. So this is how it works. I didn't know this, but so if you see, this is me casting. First of all, I can always see the blue circle. That's nothing right there. But the thing is that you can see, based on the red or the green, how close you are to range. I didn't think it was like that. I thought it would show a white circle around my hero. That way I could know exactly when I'm in range. But this is arguably useful. You can see what the range of the spell is. You can also see that by hovering. So for example, if I'm playing Clockwork and I'm running into an enemy fight, I'll right click here and then I'll put my mouse over this. That way I know when I'm in range or not. And then I'll know I'm in range. Boom. But this is arguably useful, I think. I'm just not the biggest fan of it, I think. I don't know. It's very subtle. It's kind of hard to notice. But as soon as it stops, as soon as there's no red line, then you obviously know whether or not you're within range or not. I don't find this ultra useful. I do like the fact that there's a green line coming from your hero. That's probably the best part about it. Just because that way, if you're off camera, for example, you always know where your hero is. Do you see this? So if I don't have this on, all I'm seeing is the blue circle, and I don't really know where my hero is. So it can be kind of nice to figure out where you are and reference. So if I get hooked right now, my green arrow will then change. I can't show this with my hand. It'll change to the bottom right, basically. It'll be down this direction instead. So that part's kind of nice. Or if I get Force Staff, it'll move suddenly, and that may reveal to me that I'm being moved or disabled or something like that. As a whole, I think I'm okay not using this. I do see the value in it now, but I'm personally not very interested. I know about where my spells are. For new players, I actually really recommend turning this on. If you guys are new, I think you should turn this on. But for somebody that's played the game a lot, I already know what my cast points are. It's right here. I knew that. Just because I play the game enough. Cool thing about Nova, by the way, is that this is actually slightly misleading. Keep in mind that, see where the red is? So this is the farthest I can cast the spell, but the reality is that it catches all the way to the outer limit. So if I'm trying to cast on this range creep, I'm actually not limited by here. Oops. I'm not limited by this. I'm limited by that plus half of the radius. So if I want to nuke this guy, I actually only have to stand right here. It'll catch everybody. So the range on this is actually a lot longer. Any AoE spell is like that. It's just that Nova is so big in terms of AoE that it's a lot easier to land. So that's kind of cool. Alright, back to that. I'm going to turn that off. I don't think I'm interested in using it, but any new player that doesn't know your ranges very well, I recommend turning that on. Oops, wrong one. Hotkeys, advance. Am I on the... No. Where am I? There's like so many things. So this is basic. I didn't even get to this yet. I'm on advanced right. Which one's basic? This one's basic. But this one's also basic. I think this is the main screen, is why I'm confused. That was rangefinder when casting. I'm not interested. Player names over health bar, don't give a shit. Hit points over health bar, I think is really important. Because what this shows is, you can see the value. I think it will show the HP of heroes, for example. So if I go into a game, let's go watch a game. Let's watch PyCat play Luna briefly. If I hop into a game, I should be able to see a very small number. Personally, I never look at this. I look at the HP ticks instead. And in fact, I actually can't see this. Maybe this is just because this is spectating. When you're observing, you usually see the spectating stuff. So you see names. When you're playing, I think it's different. So that's not exactly what I was hoping to demonstrate. But again, I can't even recognize whether or not I do this or not, or can see it. But it should show a 4-digit or 3-digit, depending on how low your HP is, about how much HP you have. Anyways, the way that I look at it, and I don't know if this is an advanced option or not. Does it show? I know you can do this in a text file for the game. You can customize this. But for every hero's HP, I actually could have shown it in that game. Let me show it in that game again. You can see everybody's HP. You can estimate it within pretty close, within 50 HP, if you're fast. I'll just pause the game as soon as I get in. It's a little thing to teach. Okay, so if we look at Pudge here. I don't want directed camera. Why is that not there? That's weird. Is my hotkeys working? Okay, so let's look at Pudge. If you look at his HP, these little thin ticks, these mean 250 HP, and the dark ticks mean 1,000. So I can instantly look and say he has a little bit over 1,300 HP, which he does. He's got 1,371, just by looking at these health bars. So that's how you should figure out how much damage you're doing. If for Axe Chop, for example, they have to have less than 1 bar here for level 1, because it does 250. Things like that are how you should do it. But That exists. I'll close this up. That was weird. I don't know why the bottom bar wasn't coming up. Very bizarre. That was options, just about done. Colorblind mode, differentiate ally health bars. You can make them like yellow rather than green. If you guys are having trouble finding your hero in a fight, especially if you're new, I'd recommend turning this on and this. These are really good for new players. I should maybe make like a little image guides, things I recommend for new players. Because I think this gives you guys all the information you're ever going to want, but it's not easily digestible. The story of my fucking YouTube channel. Automatically choose cursor size. Yeah, you can do that here. That's kind of irrelevant. Some people want giant cursors. I don't know why you'd want this. Maybe if you can't find your cursor. Does that adjust how much I scroll? No, it's still the same. It's kind of interesting. It'd be kind of fun just to play like this for a day, just a giant cursor. Let's go back to automatic. 100 is fine, if I can get there. Okay. Advanced options. I really recommend turning off screen shake. I think it's distracting. Smooth drag when speccing, that's good. I don't think mine exactly works, but left click activates camera grip. When checked, you must. What's the purpose of that? Why would people want this? Maybe so you don't accidentally press camera grip during a fight, something like that. It's probably some like quality of life thing related to camera grip that I'm not sure about. Anyways, we're almost done. Summoned unit auto attack, same as hero. Use the same setting as the selected hero auto attack option. What does this mean? Summoned unit auto attack. Attack any nearby hero unless you have just moved. Okay, so this is basically meaning that my summoned units do standard, but I might want them to do other stuff, for example. Like maybe I want my illusions to never auto-attack, for example. And in reality, what I probably want is I want my summoned units to always attack. This is actually a really cool thing, actually. It kind of depends. If I'm playing Chen, for example, I generally want my creeps to do what I tell them, and if they're not moving, I don't want them to move, but sometimes I forget to attack with them, and then I'm limiting my DPS. So what actually might be better, for example, is that if I have a centaur and I run it in and I stun somebody, what I usually forget to do is right-click with the centaur afterwards. So for a centaur, it's better for them to always attack any enemy in range, because I don't want them to not attack. Almost always I want them to attack. Almost always, almost always. So for illusions, very similar. As soon as you spawn illusions, you want them to start attacking. And my illusions usually do, I believe. But I'm actually going to change this to always, because I always want my summoned units to attack. If I spawn a Necro 3, I want them to start attacking instantly. I don't have to select them and then right-click. And this could actually save me a hotkey, because I was talking about Beastmaster before. If I turn this to always, now I can blink in, summon Necro, roar the guy, my Necros are already attacking, and then I can summon a boar and then click my ranged Necro and Mana Burn. That's a lot easier. Actually, I'm really glad I went through this. This needed to be done. Before it was standard. That means if I spawn them, they won't start attacking, usually, is what's going to happen. So, until I tell them to do something. My Manta illusions, I assume they attacked in the past, but I'm not sure. Probably because I would be attacking a hero then using Manta. Don't know if my Manta did this or not in the past, but I think this should probably be on always. You usually want summon things to instantly start attacking. I think that's better, and you shouldn't have to select them to do that. Also, sometimes I forget to auto attack with my Eidolons, or some of the neutrals have weird bugs, or sometimes I'll run illusions near a camp and I'll forget to actually do an attack command and they'll just stand there instead of attacking. This is actually going to increase my farm by a very, very small amount by turning this on due to my mistakes. Disable auto attack when stop is held. Yep, that's correct. When held, selected units will not auto attack. Okay. Toggle auto attack automatically. Hold forces auto attack never. I don't really need this. Quick cast on key down. You can change this so quick cast will cast the spell when your key goes down instead of released. That's an option if you guys like quick cast. I think sometimes it's good for really fast things like spells, but I don't personally use it, and I'm cool not using it. Shop using hotkeys. There's hotkeys. I don't know why, but there are. I think you do stuff like choose a column and then choose what item to purchase, stuff like that, but I've never used it. Smart attack move. Select units will target the enemy nearest to the cursor instead of the unit nearest to its current location. Interesting. Ooh, I kind of like that a lot, actually. So basically, if there's a ton of shit going on and you're having trouble right-clicking on one guy, what you can do instead is right-click near the person. Even if you misclick, the person that you click near is who you run to attack to. Now, the problem with this is that usually when I come out of disruption, I will just A-click the ground, which means that if, for example, I'm far away from something, I'll walk and start attacking instead of starting to attack the ground. For some heroes, this is good. For some heroes, it's probably bad, I would say. Heroes that this is probably good for, maybe Ursa. Heroes that you never want to miss any attack on in your attack, this is probably good on. So Ursa, it's probably really good. You could turn smart attack move on, because then you would never, or be less likely to attack the wrong hero. Rather than coming out of disruption, for example, and you attacking the wrong thing twice, you would more likely attack the right thing because your right click should be close to your opponent. If you're playing Sven, though, it doesn't really matter who you hit. If you're playing Kunkka, it doesn't matter because you're just cleaving anyways. So it doesn't really matter where you click the ground. For those heroes, I would probably want smart attack move off. Also, the other problem with this is that if you're farming through the jungle, this kind of becomes a problem. For example, if I'm leaving one camp and I'm running to another camp, but along the way I run into a hero, I would just walk past the hero is what would happen. I think. Unless I can't see the neutral yet. If I can see the neutral already, then it would probably walk to that camp, then farm it. If I walk past a hero that I didn't see before that, on the way I would walk past them. But if I can't see the neutral, I might attack that person. I'm not sure. This is kind of interesting. I kind of like it, but I'm kind of scared of it as well. Lowers my chance of misclicking. Like, for example, if you're trying to attack somebody in trees. I bet for juking this is a really good thing. Because if somebody's juking and appears randomly, your character might auto attack them instead of like the creeps in front of you. Or if you're like close to finishing an attack move or a right click, but then he jukes back into fog, it might work better. I'm not sure though. When holding down the right mouse button, right click repeatedly. Yeah, I'm gonna turn that on. This is what you should. I forgot that this existed, but this is what you need to use to grab runes over people. Right now I spam right click. You should just hold it down. This is kind of bullshit that this exists, but the problem is that you can easily program this in with just about any mouse that has macro function. If a mouse has macro function, what that means is you can program it to do things. So for example, I could tell it to right click every 0.1 seconds, which is faster than a human probably can, or 0.05 seconds. That way I always get a bounty rune. By turning this on, it makes sure that everybody has the same playing field for something as simple as a right click mouse, which is a pretty big deal for bounty runes and later games for bottled runes. But I'm definitely going to use this in the future. You could also use this in the same way that smart attack move is used, and that you can kind of hold down right click and keep right clicking people. The problem is that it might interrupt your animation if you keep selecting different people. But you can basically hold this down until you get to the right person. Although technically, my right clicks on the ground are not attack moves. They are moves unless they're on a hero, then they're attacks. This might be weird. I'll probably only use this for runes, but I should have had this on always. Spectating games show the stats drop down that the broadcaster is using. Okay, that's fine. Bring Toto 2 to the front when match found. I don't personally need to do this because I have audio on Minimap, or on everything, even if I'm minimized, but you guys might need it. Bring Dota 2 to front when pick phase begins. That's not a bad option, but I'm not interested. I think I have this on. What's my console button? Oops. Hotkeys advanced. Console end. Okay, mine works. We're good. Don't need that crap. Is this where we are? Yeah, we are. Turn all this crap off. Expose public match data. This is for websites like DotaBuff. If you guys want them to collect your data and track your stats, I recommend using this. If you guys don't like it when people look at your games and say like, oh, you played shit on this game. If people like bully you on the internet or something, you might want to turn this off. Or if you guys want to be anonymous. There's a lot of pro players, for example, that have alt accounts that they play on. So for example, if a new hero gets popular, like what if Underlord is in the meta, but everybody thinks he's not good, but another team thinks like, oh, I think he's actually really good, I'm going to practice him. They'll go on a Smurf, they'll get on an account that doesn't have this checked, and then they'll practice it on that account. That way no one can link it to them. And then your match data doesn't go up. But for most players, I really recommend turning this on, because then you can look at all the cool Dota buff stats about your play style and the heroes you pick and stuff like that. Block party invites from non-friends, not a big deal. Hide party status when not an open party. It's up to you guys. I don't really give a shit about this. Do not auto accept invites when an open party. I never set myself to open party, I don't think. I don't really know what this does, but adjust accordingly. Minimap misclick protection time. Okay, this is actually something I should probably use. Time in seconds at input isn't registered when the mouse first enters the minimap area. So the way that this works is when, this is what I was talking about, where you're running back to your base, sorry, this way. When you're running back to your base and you accidentally click on the minimap, I should lift this timer up, because if my mouse goes to the minimap and I instantly click, then the problem is that I'm clicking on the minimap too fast. What I need to do is I need to calculate how long it takes for me to move my mouse to the map and then click on the map. And the reality is that it's probably higher than 1/10 of a second. But I will be able to figure that out while I play. Looks like the max is a half second. So depending on how slow you are at moving to the map and clicking, we'll adjust this. So I'll probably personally, I don't know, something like this is probably reasonable. And this should prevent me from minimap misclicking. I actually do this all the time, especially when I'm controlling a lot of units, because I kind of click all over the place. Especially when I click drag like this, I'll click drag everything, and then I'll let go of my mouse click and sometimes right click right on the minimap is what I do. So I should have had this on the whole time. Talked about double tap self cast, dynamically scale hero icons in a minimap. So as they get closer to each other, they get smaller. Doesn't scale heroes, only directional. It's okay. I might want this on, to be honest, but you can kind of see who's all in one location anyways. Don't know if I want this or not. Not sure. If there's 3 heroes that are ganking me and they all get small arrows because they're ganking me and together, do I want that so I can see them all individually, or do I want just big things to show up that way I instantly see that there's heroes there? I'm not sure. I think I'll try playing with this on the next couple of games to see if I like it. Move after ability target cancelled. When using right click to cancel targeting an ability, move to the clicked location in addition to canceling the ability. Okay, this is good, because sometimes if I'm about to cast a spell, I'll right click the ground instead of pressing S. So rather than using the right click just to cancel the animation, it will also right click to that spot instead of just canceling it, which apparently it did. I'm going to turn this on. I'm not 100% sure what it does. I don't like camera color shift when dead because it's annoying. Network information is good. It shows FPS ping packet loss in the upper right, so you can see if you're lagging faster. Hide tips on loading screens. I'll leave it on. I don't give a shit. Default tournament spoiler block to on. Don't want that because I don't care. Automatically add new items to collection. Okay, and join regional chat on startup. Something else you guys can do if you want. Alright, I think that's basically it. Other than that, use your resolution. I have all this shit on. I have a 144 frame hertz monitor, but it never really gets up to that. It's about 120 right now. Before I had this set to 120, I just changed this like 2 days ago, which was kind of crazy. But I could probably turn some of my settings down to increase my FPS, which I might actually start doing, because when I'm rendering and when I'm recording at 1080 and 60 FPS, it kind of heavily impacts things. So I might turn down my settings a little bit, because trying to get 144 frames is really difficult with super high quality. So if I just reduce my stream quality to like 720, 45 FPS, then I could do it, I'm sure, easily. But at 60 FPS, 1080p, it's really difficult. It takes a really beast computer to even do that. So maybe I'll reduce things. But audio doesn't really matter. I turn music off. That's about it. Sound to desktop. Get a push to talk key. That's about it. I think we're done. All right, that's hotkeys. That made sense, right, guys? Can turn this off. Again, we'll look at my keyboard layout. There's some adjusting I need to do. Maybe need to use the G key. I do use Shift, and I technically use Control as well. But yeah, that's hotkeys. I'll mess around with the camera grip thing a bit, probably. But I hope you guys learned a bit. This is a very late update, but it's here finally. Finally doing the update. Just need to double check. We're doing a what the duck very nowish. We have 15 minutes, which is in about 10 minutes. Okay, so we're good. Yeah, that's hotkeys. Go adjust your hotkeys. That's an update to the UI, first time in 4 years. This is much more complicated than the last one I made. The last one I made, it was like, do whatever you want. Now I feel a little bit more solidified in my keyboard theory crafting because I put some thought into this. Hopefully it wasn't too long. It was too long. but hopefully you didn't think so. Alright, I'm going to make an Underlord video later today after What the Duck, absolutely promise, and maybe a stream tonight. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in a bit.